How am I doing? Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to a live broadcast where I get an opportunity to hear some of your questions and maybe answer some of them for you. My name is Jerry Wise, and I've been a life and relationship coach and a people helper for many years now, probably close to 45. And uh, the topic that I presented today for this live is, healing from self absorbed parents. And that's a very important topic. I think there are a lot of folks who struggle with that. There were certainly struggles for me in that personally. And we also talk a lot about narcissistic parents and um, who are, again, self absorbed, because if you have narcissistic traits, you're going to be self absorbed. I know there have been a couple questions people have already presented. I hope I can answer some of those for you. Some were talking about what about self absorbed siblings, and certainly when we run into those problems where others around us are self absorbed. I mean, you can have self absorbed coworkers, self absorbed bosses. I've had some of those. Um, and just dealing with those who are self absorbed. And it has been something that has been on my recovery track for some time. And as a recovering codependent, the that's certainly always been an issue. And dealing with other people who are focused on themselves. When we are raised by self absorbed parents, or a self absorbed parent, or a narcissistic parent, we then experience the effects of reverse parenting within ourselves. And this reverse parenting is produces a combination of codependency and parentification. Because if a parent is self absorbed, then that reverse parenting uh, shifts into us where we become the parents. We become the parents for them. We become the parents for everyone as we grow in life and get older. And that becomes a trait and a pattern that we have throughout our adult life. And that can be very difficult. And I think that reverse parenting, if you have a parent who's not parenting, then where is the parenting or the caring or the nurturing or all those things? Where are they going to go? Well, they go into the child, and then the child becomes the nurturer. The child becomes the caregiver. The child takes on all those things that a parent should be doing if they have a self absorbed parent. And so we call that reverse parenting. And that's very damaging. It's traumatic. It really changes our lives because it changes how we are as kids. In other words, we have to grow up real fast. We have to grow up to take care of these self absorbed parents. Be aware of our self absorbed parents, maneuver around our self absorbed parents, deal with the emotional process involved of having self absorbed parents. That reverse parenting then involves, which should sound familiar to you, constantly monitoring others and try to discern what they are feeling. Isn't that what parents are supposed to do for us as kids? To kind of monitor us and see how we're doing, and kind of monitor our lives and teach us, train us, love us, and also become aware of us. Secondly, become upset when others are in distress. Should become upset. Parents should become upset when their child is in distress. Instead of that happening when we grew up in a self absorbed family, rather than that happening, we then become upset when someone is distressed. Parent, father, mother, siblings, and we end up being distressed. Um, feel that you must have others liking and approval most all of the time. And again, if parents are wanting to be nurturing, caring parents for their children in a healthy family, in a self absorbed family, then it becomes they're self absorbed, self focused, and then we're always looking for that being liked and approved, which should be already, quote, our birthright as a kid to a parent, that we are loved and approved and liked by a parent if we're children. We take on the responsibilities of others' welfare and our emotional well being, even if they're independent adults who can care for themselves. And again, where did we learn that? Parents should be in charge of the welfare, emotional well being of children. That doesn't happen because of the self absorption or narcissism. Then what we do is we internalize that, and now we're worried about everybody's welfare, everybody's emotional well being, siblings, parents, friends, um, and mostly of people, and probably if not 99% of people, who are independent and can care for themselves. And that's what I often find, even in some of the questions, which we'll be getting to today, that we're still taking care of people who are not willing or choosing to care for themselves. And we feel that pull to take care of them, worry about them, see what I should do to make it better, make sure I don't say this, try to say that, try to help them to change. And that's a big part of what we end up doing as adults when we've grown up in these families. We also remain on alert for signs that others are in distress or uncomfortable. That's a parent role. But if parents aren't doing that because they're only worried about their well being and not us as and our being children, then we internalize it and we start having reverse parenting, and now we're taking care to make sure nobody's in distress, younger siblings, older siblings, parents. We want to make sure they're all comfortable and not distressed. We also tend to stay on edge, churned up, or even upset, and can't let go of some of these feelings. And then we just live in an upset state. And I find that true with adult children of narcissists, people who've grown up with self-absorbed parents. They just live in an upset state. If it's not this, it's that. If it's not that, it's this. And it's fairly chronic. And it can make us feel pretty miserable because we just never have peace. We just never feel relaxed or calm, or we always must be on the upset side of life. Um, we feel fearful of any signals that there is conflict present, um, anywhere. If we feel there's conflict happening, even when we're not involved, we are on the alert about conflict happening. You ever been at work and two coworkers or a boss and a coworker are in conflict? Does it raise your anxiety? Does it upset you when other people are in conflict? And certainly we don't want to be in conflict because that really does upset us even more. We also then can only feel happy or positive when those around us are feeling the same way. We then move into mirroring the relationship with other people. If they're happy, I'm happy. If they're unhappy, I'm unhappy. We can never be happy and then be unhappy. That just doesn't work. Especially for the codependent, That's very common. You must mirror those around you. And then we find ourselves attracted to people who are not very happy, not very positive. And then we kick in our reverse parenting and want them to feel better. And why do we want them to feel better? So I can feel better. And so we'll try to save, fix, rescue. We'll do all of those things to try to make ourselves feel better. And then we stay in those emotional dynamics and patterns that we learned growing up. let me let me start with a question. And you're free to ask questions of me today. Put capital question, make it all capitals, and then write a brief question if you can, as brief as you can. We don't have to go into all of the details of the situation you have because we have a lot of different people watching today, and I kind of want to speak in generalities. Certainly, we would be happy to help you with one of our coaches. And the and would you please also leave a like on this video? I'd certainly appreciate that. That would help us tremendously too. If you haven't joined the channel, I hope you will. And then we also ask if you want to donate. We would certainly appreciate that. I provide a lot of free videos, 350 of them, and worked a long time on those, and that's free for anyone. And any donations would be greatly appreciated. If you'd like your question to go to the top of the list, there's a donate button. Please do that. The donation's up to you, but it certainly will help the work and the message that I'm hoping to do. First of all, I've got a question that came in. Could you please speak about whether the inner critic, scrutinizer, micromanager can ever fully go away? And how? Every action I take, I imagine how the controllers in my life will react. Thank you for hosting the live. I appreciate that. That's a great question. And certainly that inner critic is definitely a common thing that individuals experience who grew up with self-absorbed parents or narcissistic parents. That inner critic can be merciless. And then we put on top of that, we have the inner critic going on. Now we have the hyper focus on what will others think or feel, just as you mentioned in the question, and wondering how others are going to react. First of all, I like to tell people, I understand you have that inner critic. It may have been programmed into you long ago. You have learned that and internalized that, and that's part of having our family of origin still within us. And we want to work on getting the family of origin out of us. So, the inner critic has been programmed in there. Then, now as an adult, I also want to say it is your inner critic. Now, mom and dad or different parents or family members may still be critical, but you're an adult now. And so this inner critic is yours, and it is yours to deal with and begin to resolve. One question I ask people, if you stopped the inner critic, if a magic wand could be placed over you and the inner critic would stop, what would be the downsides of that? Not what would be the upsides. I know the upsides. We'd all feel better. I'd be happier. I wouldn't hear those critical messages or voices or thoughts or micromanaging other people. What would happen if you stop that? What are the downsides? And oftentimes, people will share different answers to that question. I'll give you maybe a couple of examples. Um, if I stopped micromanaging, everything would fall apart, or the relationships would fall apart, or no one would be doing anything on their side. It would just all kind of stop. And there again, maybe it needs to. Also, if I didn't micromanage, someone would be critical for me not playing a role in that. So I would be criticized for not micromanaging. The inner critic. If I stop the inner critic, um, many times people feel left with, well, I don't know what kind of relationship I would then have with myself or with other people if that inner critic stopped. It's so normal, it's so common, it's so frequent. And I always tell people, and even in my workshop, we've been working on, if you say or think a negative thing about yourself, you must say something positive or think a thought, belief positive to counter it. Do that for a week and see what changes take place. Countering the inner critic. I know it's there. I know that happens. Um, Also, it is pretty much a taught lack of self-love. We don't care about ourselves as much as we would want to. And so we do have to make choices about caring about ourselves and loving ourselves. The inner critic, and I've got another friend who runs a counseling center, and she's funny, and I've trained her for many years. She's great. And she talks about that's her inner mom talking, and we give it a name, or that's my inner Brunhilde, or some kind of name that I would give that, so I have some distance between the critical thought and me. In other words, it's not just me. It's something that's going on that's been patterned in there for a long time. And that if I give it that, oh, well, that just sounds like my mom talking, it takes some of the sting away. Because, oh, well, that's memories past, the ghost of mom that's still coming out in that. And I don't have to believe it as much. It's a ghost from the past. I do have some videos where I do discuss the inner critic. You might want to take a look at those for adult children of narcissists. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Let me take one more. One person asked, and I think this is common for a lot of people. It's a little longer question, but I think it's a common one that a lot of people experience. I'm the one who hosts, plans the parties, holidays for my family of origin. A lot of them don't respond at all. If they do respond, it's right before the event or the holiday, making it very inconvenient. Or they just forget. Except my narcissistic spectrum mom, who does come to all the functions and then expects me to nail down my 4 siblings. Dad, stepmom to commit to coming. I'm tired of the role and want things to change. Is it overfunctioning of me to ask them multiple times if they're planning on coming to holidays and parties? I will say definitively, yes. I have realized that perhaps I am causing them anxiety and don't want that. How do I stop being the doer fixer of the family and my divorced parents? I've had this role my whole life and my siblings, and I want to take a step down, letting them take a step up. Thank you, Jerry. Great question. Common question. A lot of people have that struggle. And I think that yes, you are over functioning. And so what would you do to be unhelpful or intentionally be unhelpful in the family gatherings? Um, what if, and I think this is kind of the underfunctioning thing that we can do, in that we can decide, well, wait a minute, why am I the one who has to make sure everybody shows up? What if I start acting like them? There's no sin in that. And somebody says, oh, are we going to have holidays at your house? Oh, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Well, when are you going to think about it? I don't know. What do you think we should do for the holidays? And I become unhelpful and non overfunctioning. I think you are in a very overfunctioning position, which I would not want to be in, because I'll tell you, everybody else is staying calm while you're the one carrying all the anxiety for the events. And then mom turns up the Bunsen burner and makes it even more anxious for you. Well, what about your siblings? Have you nailed them down? Mom, I've decided not to nail them down. And Mom, I don't know who's going to come or who's not going to come. I've made a request. I've asked them to come. Um, and whatever happens, happens. I've also had people say, this year I don't want to have this at my house. So if anybody would like to do that, let me know. But I'm not planning on doing it this year. Because then everybody else gets the pressure and the anxiety, and it flows away from you. Right now, it's all flowing towards you. Because when people underfunction, they cause the overfunctioner to have more anxiety. And I think you're right. It may be time to step down. Are you ready to step down? And do you know the downsides of stepping down for you? If I actually stopped overfunctioning and I actually stepped down, what would be the downsides? Well, we wouldn't have this whole family being together. Well, I don't know. The way they're acting, I'm not sure I'd like to have that whole family together. I, I, if that's the way everybody's going to act, I'm not sure we're having a mutual relationship. But I'm the what do they call it on an ocean cruiser? I'm the cruise director for this cruise of our family of origin. I don't want to be the cruise director, and I'm going to resign from that position. I think if you watch a video of mine where I talk about the family prayer, maybe it wasn't organizing all the family gathering, but the responsibility was put on me to do the family prayer because my dad had passed away. I was a pastor at that time. I was a priest at that time. And so obviously I should be the one that prays before every meal for our family gathering. I didn't want to. I'm not their pastor. I'm a pastor. I'm their son, brother. That's who I am. I'm not my profession there. I'm not my vocation there. And I didn't want to take on that role and then regret having to go, oh, I got to go again this year and I got to be the one. Everybody turns to me and looks to me. Okay, Jerry. I'm carrying all the anxiety. And so it was at that point I said, no, I'd rather not do that. Anybody who wants to do it is free to do it, or we won't have any prayer at all. If I'm the only one who can pray, then I guess we just won't have any prayer for the meal. And I'm okay with that too. That's going back to more functioning rather than over functioning. Let me take a look here. What are some good tips for a spouse of someone who grew up in this kind of environment, the kind of self-absorbed environment? Well, one of the things I would be, sharing is that I would want to work on my own self differentiation. There's a great book called It Takes One to Tango. And that's about if you've got a spouse who has some trouble with his family or who's not dealing with their issues or whatever, then this is a book about how do I do me? And I think that's what you want to do is the spouse needs to do them. And and I think that's very important that we do us. If we have a spouse who's still caught in some kind of a conflict with his family or his parents, I want to work to stay out of that conflict. It's not always easy because we're a partner, we're a spouse to this person, but I want to emotionally stay out of that and certainly don't want to get triangulated into it. So I would stay out of the triangles, and I would also suggest talking to the spouse about what effect does his effects have on you that you might want to share with him or her. For example, if there is um, let's say that spouse who had trouble growing up and he cannot separate from his parents. Okay, let me tell you what I feel and what my feelings are about the effect of that. And I understand this is your struggle, but I also want to begin to sort out what I want to do in regard to this relationship. Um, and that certainly there are books that they can read. And I'm going to make a suggestion of a couple of books. I might as well make them right now. One is Children of the Self-Absorbed by Nina Brown, Nina Brown. And then Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson. I think those are very good books, and your spouse could do some reading in that regard, or you could do some reading to learn more about how it could impact you. I do want to thank Paul for his donation and Little Brownie for their donation. I appreciate that very much. And I just, that means a lot to me. Let me go to another question. My husband's family have been in a semi cutoff from my husband and myself for almost a year now, due to a tone they didn't like when we set boundaries with them. Anybody know about that tone that you get when you set boundaries with somebody? If they don't like it, they'll let you know, either by a facial thing, by what they say, about how silly you are, about why are you being so difficult, why are you being so sensitive, why are you making this harder, why don't you just go along and get along? Well, that's them saying, please don't detach from the family's super self. That's what they're saying. Don't detach. Stay a part of this super self in which you don't have a self. We just all share this one big super self. Well, I don't want to just keep sharing in that super self. So they took a tone when you set the boundaries. We've written cards, texts, asking to talk. They will simply ignore us. We have done this dance with them for a decade. They cut off, attack us with flying monkeys, withdraw of gifts and all contact. Then months or a year later, they start sending gifts to our kids again, cards to us, and send us random photos of their multiple outings or trips or whatever. We want things to be different for our kids' sake. They are getting older, and we want to break this generational cycle. As a Christian, the Bible tells us to resolve conflict. What are some ways to stay connected with them, honoring them, while not getting sucked into the super self? Or is this behavior something we are meant to rebuke biblically? Thank you. I'm sure there's lots of people who have experienced that before. What do we do when we start to assert some boundaries and then self absorbed parents cut off? They don't want to listen to you, they don't want to talk to you about it, they act as though nothing has even happened, and then they come back into your life again. It's almost like that narcissistic love bombing and then discarding, love bombing and then discarding, which I don't like that roller coaster. And it sounds like you're still on that roller coaster. So I like to think of myself as stepping off the roller coaster. Um, I'm not. I'm going to continue to assert my boundaries or what I want, and I'm also not going to get overly excited about them reconnecting with me, with gifts and all those kinds of things and photos, and because then it kind of builds up my hope again that, hey, maybe this will work. Hey, maybe they're feeling better. Maybe they'll accept us more. No, it's just the cycle that they're going through. Um, Now, we want things to be different for our kids' sake. I don't know if you meant by that we don't want that generational problem to come down, or we want to have a different relationship with our parents, or your husband's family so that they will have a different relationship with them. I think the second question, the latter question or statement, is not something we can control. I can't make in-laws behave so that they will treat us well and we'll have good contact for our kids so they can see their grandparents and all of that. The grandparents are not normal. And so the normal responses don't fit because this is not normal. It does say the Bible tells us to resolve conflict. Well, I don't know. I do agree that conflict, we don't want to have conflict, but the Bible doesn't talk a whole lot about narcissistic parents. The Bible doesn't talk a whole lot about self absorbed parents. It does give some parental advice, and it does enjoin and give some rules for parents that they should follow. If they don't follow those rules, uh, like provoking your children to anger, that sort of thing. If they don't follow those rules, then what's our agreement or conflict about honoring them? Does the Bible say honor your parents? And I know the Ten Commandments talk about that. I realize that, but I think there are different interpretations for that as well, because there was a whole different type of society set up. Now, do I believe you should dishonor your parents? Of course not. Don't dishonor. I don't believe in dishonoring anyone. But in terms of honoring someone in that way, then don't they have to be someone who is, how do we honor someone, if we're going to use the Bible, who rejects God and follows darkness? Now, are you supposed to honor them? Because they're still your parents. Well, I would think that would be a tough situation. And so honoring them might be difficult. When I think of honoring someone who is not well, self absorbed, narcissistic, my values are, and my own biblical or spiritual values are, I treat them with respect, I treat them with boundaries, I expect them to act as adults. That's appropriate. If they cannot do that, then there are consequences and changes I have to make, because I can't make them do that. So I don't see honoring parents as I'm just a doormat for them forever because they're my mom and dad. Also, I don't subscribe to the owing of parents. In other words, once I become an adult, I don't owe my parents anything. They don't owe me anything. The only thing they owed me by having me was to raise me, feed me, nurture me, take care of me. I mean, that was a part of having children. The law even says you have to do that. And that a good parent will do even more than that: nurturing, loving, training, teaching, supporting. But that's not something we owe them for. That's something they chose to do by having us as children. And so it's not that I have to pay them back for that. My son doesn't owe me anything. He doesn't even owe me a relationship. My son's 38 or something like that now. He doesn't owe me for what I did for him. And I think it would be inappropriate for me to expect him to owe me for that. Now, if he was an adult and we had a contract about something, then of course he might owe me. Okay, but not for his being raised and taken care of. I think staying connected, again, I like to think of, when I think of cutting off or distancing myself from parents or someone like that, or your husband's family, or what I think about is I want to be so self differentiated that they decide what they want to do with me. And if what they want to do with me is cut off, then I give them that freedom and I accept them for doing that. But I'm just being myself, a healthy, let's say healthy Christian adult. I'm being that. And if they don't like that and can't accept that and won't stay in contact with me, then what can I do? I mean, that's them choosing not to stay in contact with me, not the other way around. They're making a choice, and I don't have control over their choices. They don't want to see me for a year, talk to me for a year, fine. But then when they start sending cards and gifts and all those kinds of things, then, I might go, I might make very little of it. You know, thank you. I might just say thank you. I might, and if you want less contact, you can. And you can say, it's very difficult to stay in contact with you. It seems as though if we say or do something that is upsetting to you, then we get a reactivity from you where we may not hear from you, and then you don't want to talk about it. Because of that pattern, this is what we're going to be doing. And then I'm being an adult and being respectful and even honoring them, I think. And then I would ask, I really think, Amanda, why would you work so hard to mend it when it's not yours to mend? It really isn't. You haven't done anything that it needs mending for. You've simply stated boundaries. They got all sour about it and went away. That you haven't done anything that you need to mend. It may be kind of broken, but that's because they're breaking it. And that's because they're having reactivity. I hope that's a help to you, Amanda. Let's see here. I hope you'll again leave a like on this video, and any donations will be greatly appreciated. I think this is an easy question. Is forgiveness the same as reconciliation? Or is reconciliation different from forgiveness? There's a great book by Harriet Lerner, who's also a family systems person, and she writes the book on forgiveness. It's a great book. I do see forgiveness as different than reconciliation. I can forgive the person who came in and robbed my mother and I at our house. Reconciliation is I'm not really wanting to have a relationship with him anymore, but I can forgive him. But a reconciliation takes two, and I don't think he's able to do that because he has not changed. So I don't think that's going to happen. But I can forgive him. Um, the I think there was another donation. I appreciate it. FES Specialties, thank you so much. Um, another question Kim has, please clarify the definition of self-absorbed parents and a few examples. I missed the first few minutes of the session. If you did already, thank you. Um, I talked about the effect on us is one thing I did talk early on. I think the self-absorbed parent is it can be there are different types of self-absorbed parents. There's the needy self-absorbed parent. There's the prickly self-absorbed parent. There's the conniving self-absorbed parent. There's the grandstanding self-absorbed parent. And you can kind of put those into categories of narcissism too, narcissistic parents. The self-absorbed means that they see all of the world through their wants, their needs, and their entitlement, importance, their value. That's the self-absorbed parent. Also, in the couple of books I mentioned, they would talk about the self-absorbed parent more. And you can go look up narcissistic parents and you'll get a list of traits for them online and in many books. And again, self-absorbed means I'm just worried about me. That's all I'm worried about. It's not a healthy self-focus. It's a blindness and an unwillingness or enableness to see and care about other people. Empathy-wise, concern-wise, it's just the rest of the world doesn't matter. And that's kind of a self-absorbed parent. I know I have these children, but so what? Let them raise themselves, and let them be sure to take care of my needs. That's what needs to happen for a self-absorbed parent. Amanda writes, is it common that children are likely triggers to family of origin systems, that is, self-absorbed, emotionally immature, etc.? Is it common that children are likely triggers to family of origin? You mean, do they trigger the family of origin? I would. I'm not sure exactly the nature of that question, and maybe you can rewrite it so I know. I mean, I can go at that a couple of different ways. Um, we are all triggers to the family of origin system. We all ping off of it, and we ping it and it pings us. Everyone. That's the emotional system of a family. And the goal is to become less pinged, and the goal is to become more individuated from this clump of that family super self, that we become more individuated. I don't think we ever totally lose the umbilical cord completely, because I think that umbilical cord is as old as humanity itself and goes back generation after generation and generation. We are just too connected in that way. But I do believe the effects of that umbilical cord can be cut significantly by our own maturity, our own lack of lessened reactivity, greater calmness, and sense of self-awareness, self-definition, and self-regulation. If we can learn to do those things. But we have to learn some things to be able to do those things. And that's what I bring up in my videos all the time. And I'm working on an online program for folks as well, so that they can learn how to accomplish that. Thanks, Amanda. Let's see. on that. I think I just lost my page. Hold on. Sorry. My technological skills. I have 5 thumbs when it comes to phones. Uh, let's see here. And DDA donated. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. That helps me do these videos. It costs a lot to do these videos. I know it may sound funny and but it is a lot of work and a lot of effort. And I want to pay it forward for people who have helped me over the years. Now there was a there was a question. Greta wrote, "How about healing from narcissistic adult children? What do you do to heal if you have narcissistic children?" Ooh, that's a big one too. And that does happen. And I know so many times narcissistic children, as I've heard in comments, the parents of some narcissistic children may get a bad rap because many people believe the only way you can be a narcissist is if the parent is a narcissist and they are toxic and abuse their kids. That is not the science, and it doesn't mean that doesn't happen. I believe it does happen and happens commonly that way, but I just want to say there's more to it than that. It's more complicated than that. How we get personality disorders. So I just want to say let's be open-minded, because I've met with a lot of parents who have had this kind of struggle, and at least they're not just pretending not to be narcissists, but some really do care about their children and always have, but their children have taken a very difficult direction and maybe have taken on a personality disorder. Um, with that question, I like to think it's complicated because it involves 2 different things. One is it involves our parental role, that we're a parent to these children, and even if they're adult children. And then there's the role where we kind of get abused or misused or ill-used by the narcissistic children. They keep their kids away from us. They use them as a weapon. Where we can't see our grandkids. They blame us for things that never happened in the past, and I've had that happen many times. And I do believe people about their abuse, etc. I also know when I go through all the research, talking to aunts and uncles, parents, siblings, and they're all saying, no, that never happened, then what do you do with that? I can't get any collaboration of that, but yet they're still making that accusation that about abuse or those types of things. So I think there are times in which that abuse did not happen. There are times it certainly has happened, and people will deny that. But I think there's also, particularly with narcissistic children, they'll level some distortions about the past. Because narcissism is about distortion. It distorts reality. And that's a primary characteristic of narcissism. So as I mentioned, there are 2 levels: the parental role, and then the role as we interact with them as adults. And I think the parental role, of course, we have to give up as parents. When my child becomes an adult, I want to give up that role as parent. I don't give up the role as being father, like with my adult son. I'll never not be his father. I'm biologically his father. That's not going to change. But I no longer want to be, nor do I want to function as a parent in that way. Um, and I want to become an adult who is his father, who loves him, but I'm an adult, no longer parenting. So I want to deal with the parental role and letting go of that. And then, secondly, I have to deal with them as an adult. If they are narcissistic, then I have all the narcissistic injury and trauma that comes from that. And I want to insulate myself from that. And again, you can ask for therapy or counseling or coaching and see if they would be open to that. Again, I've tried to work on that in many different ways. It's very difficult to do because the narcissist, if you don't see it their way, there is no other way to see it. Period. Well, that's hard to help someone grow or learn new things. Um, and I know that can be difficult. I do believe we can heal from that, uh, focusing on our own lives, letting our narcissistic children be who they are, and we limit our time with them. Grieve over the loss that I don't have a normal child. We have to grieve over that loss. It would be no different than if your child um, had lost a leg in a horrible accident, and they were a child. Well, now I don't have an adult child who has both legs. And we grieve over that, and there may be limitations to their life. And we do the grief work of that. We love them the same. I don't think anybody has to stop loving a narcissistic child, but loving them well, here's what I say about loving. When you have narcissism or self absorption involved, the normal rules about loving don't work. You have to use other rules about loving. And that may mean being open, honest, setting boundaries, not tolerating uh, inappropriate behavior, limiting your contact if you have to. Because in some ways, I know this may sound like a reversal of what I just said, I am parenting them by me being a healthy adult as an adult. So it does impact them. How it's going to impact them is up to them. But I want to interact with them in a way that takes into consideration their narcissism and not pretend it's not there. And again, those can be hard decisions, and I know they are. I've sat with too many people who've had to struggle with that. Um, and but just like any narcissist, any alcoholic or addict, you want to. They may have to hit bottom before they make any changes. And narcissists, um, you know, um, let me take a look here. And narcissists, there are some who have gotten some amount of help for their narcissism. I've known people who've gone to counseling. I know I'm a narcissist. I'm going to try to, and there are some theories and therapies that can be of help to them. Because many times narcissists may have a dual diagnosis. They may be narcissistic and depressed. Well, they can be less toxic if they're not as depressed. Um, and so they may need help for that. I hope that's a help to you. Um, and Fallen in Rabbath, old Rabbathol, I'm not sure how to say that. Thank you for your donation. You mentioned my very codependent mom. Oops. How do I take off that text? That's my my script. That's okay. Let's see here. My very codependent mom died 2 years ago. Nothing was ever resolved. No note from her. I took care of her for life. So much left undone. About healing. is it possible to do good healing while staying in regular or low contact with the parent or parents? Um, you know, I think that uh, yes, you can always do healing wherever you're at. Whatever I've started help with people when they're living with narcissistic parents as an adult. I also help people that go have low contact with them. I help people that have no contact with them. So I think you can begin to do good healing. Now, and then as you grow, as you mature, as you become more self differentiated, you'll then see a better path forward as what next steps you want to take in terms of what kind of relationship you're going to have with self absorbed parents. And that's point I want to make today. You have a right to decide what kind of relationship you want to have with a self absorbed parent, but you must take in consideration reality, meaning they are self absorbed and a self absorbed parent. Now, what kind of relationship do you want to have, accepting that fact? And I think that's very important. And I say, then what do you want? Do you want to see them once a year? Once every 10 years? Call them twice a week? What kind of relationship do you want to have? This is who you have. Now, what do you want to have and what kind of relationship do you want to have with them? Not what kind of ideal relationship do I want to have with them, because you're not going to have an ideal relationship. But you can decide what kind of relationship you're going to have. Let me take a look here. There are some things I want to share with you. I appreciate all of your questions, and I'm going to keep your questions because I can use those in other lives that we're going to be having. And I so appreciate you joining me today. I want to give you how we heal the hurt and maybe give you just a quick overview of that. And thank you for the donations. They mean a lot. Please like this video. That helps with what's going on YouTube. We want to get the message out to folks as much as we can. So how do you heal the hurt? We begin by awakening our true self. And that's a beginning. Can we have a true self? Can we begin to, what do we really want? What do we really feel? What do we really think? And asking ourselves these questions. And are we going to really love ourselves and begin to care about having a true self? We want to wake up from an outdated role self, meaning just playing the role of being the child of this parent or a child of a narcissistic parent. I don't want to be a child of a narcissistic parent. I want to be Jerry. And that's what I want to grow from. Now, it never changes the fact that I have a narcissistic parent, but I don't want to play that role with them because all the expectations go along with that role. And of course, that role is also a part of the super self, excuse me, the super self that I continue to connect with. And roles connect with the super self. Waking up to what you really feel, waking up to your anger, waking up to better self care, waking up through relationship breakdowns. If a relationship breaks down, what is that telling you? Just like the couple of questions we had, when you set your boundaries and it breaks down because you just said, hey, this is what we'd like to do, and then they go run off and are critical, send flying monkeys. Wait a minute, what? That's my hitting bottom. What am I going to do about this? I need to wake up. This relationship breakdown ground is teaching me something and telling me something. Waking up from idealizing others, waking up to a new set of values, waking up to your strengths, waking up and getting free from the childhood trauma and childhood issues. And that means we have to go get help to work on them. You can work with me. I have other associates you can work with who I've trained, and they're great people and very kind, loving, and effective. Um, Also, read the two books, Children of the Self-Absorbed by Nina Brown, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Again, I want to thank you. You're going to see me again soon. We're going to do another live. Stay tuned. Send in your questions. Be great when you see a live, send in your questions earlier, say on YouTube. Sorry I couldn't get to all the questions, but I hoped I got to some. I again thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day and be wise.